Well, President Trump's unexpected announcement that transgender people can no longer serve in the military caught Washington by surprise. The conservatives, including many evangelicals, stood behind the president on his decision.
Democrats and gay rights groups quickly denounced Trump's move. Some Republicans also opposed it, but others say the most important issue is making sure our military is the strongest it can be. Eric Rosales brings us the story from Washington.
President Donald Trump announced plans to reinstate the transgender ban through Twitter on Wednesday. The president said American forces must be focused on decisive and overwhelming victory and could not afford to accommodate them.
He's also voiced that this is a very expensive and disruptive policy, and based on consultation that he's had with his national security team, came to the conclusion that it erodes military readiness and unit cohesion, and made the decision based on that.
The announcement comes after Defense Secretary James Mattis last month delayed a review of an Obama-era policy that allowed openly transgender people to join the military. A Pentagon spokesperson told CBN News, "We refer all questions about the president's statements to the White House. We will continue to work closely with the White House to address the new guidance provided by the Commander-in-Chief on transgender individuals serving in the military." The Pentagon won't release any data on the number of transgender troops currently serving. However, a RAND study shows that there are between 2,500 and 7,000 transgender service members on active duty and up to 4,000 in the reserves. Trump's announcement comes as lawmakers debate the current practice of requiring the Pentagon to pay for gender transition, which could cost U.S. taxpayers almost $4 billion over 10 years. House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy appeared on CBN's own Faith Nation.
It looks like President Trump has come out after talking to his generals and others, seeing that maybe it's not the best for the military currently as what Obama proposed.
The president is the commander-in-chief. He makes decisions after talking with field commanders, his DOD leadership team, the Joint Chiefs, head of Joint Chiefs. It's important for us to support that military team. This is their decision, so we will support it.
It seems to me that if someone comes to the military with the notion of saying, I want to serve my country and want to protect this, the last great hope of mankind on earth, then at least they probably should figure out, and I say this without malice, figure out whether you're a man or a woman first, and then come to the military and serve this country.
There's no word yet on how this policy would affect the future of transgender Americans currently serving in the U.S. military. Eric Rosales, CBN News, Washington.
Well, it's been said it's just eminently common sense. We don't want to be picking up the tab for operations on people who want to change their sex when they get into the military. That would just be foolishness. And as Representative France said, and Will spoke, they should make up their mind before they join the military, whether they're a man or a woman, and then go in under that guise. But anyhow, a tempest in teapot. Well, this health care thing, if it's not confusing you, it's confusing all of us. They've now got what they call a skinny bill coming up. Senate Republicans couldn't pass a measure that completely got rid of Obamacare, so they're going to try that skinny bill, and then that will in turn go to conference. Well, what is it going to be? Dale Hurd has that story.
The amendment is not agreed to.
Without the votes to repeal and replace Obamacare, Senate Republicans are lowering their sights and trying to unite behind a so-called skinny repeal that would only undo a few of the most unpopular elements of Barack Obama's Affordable Care Act.
Ultimately, we want to get legislation to finally end the failed Obamacare status quo.
The skinny bill is an attempt by Senate Republicans to keep their promise to repeal and replace Obamacare while trying to break through the division among Senate Republicans.
Everybody needs to saddle up and put it all on the table and say, this is my position.
President Trump called out Republican senators like Alaska's Lisa Murkowski for voting with Democrats against repeal and replace.
Any senator who votes against repeal and replace is telling America that they are fine with the Obamacare nightmare.
A skinny repeal would probably end the Obamacare mandate that most people buy insurance or pay a penalty, and it would not require that most employers provide health insurance for their workers. It would keep Obamacare's expansion of Medicaid for low-income Americans in 31 states and require insurers to provide coverage for anyone, regardless of their health. Some senators hope a skinny bill will pass and then turn into a replacement for Obamacare once it goes to joint conference committee with the House and Senate. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Well, our CBN News political correspondent David Brody is with us now in Washington. David, the deal is somebody's going to appoint conferees for the Senate. Somebody will appoint conferees for the House. They get together, they come up with another bill, and that goes forward. So the thing can change dramatically. Tell us your take on it. What's going to happen?
Well, you know, the scuttlebutt up here, Pat, is, you know, what are the chances that even this skinny bill can get through? And my answer is, I don't know, 10%, 30%, 70%, 65%. No one has any idea whether or not this skinny repeal can get through, and that's because no one's quite sure what's going to be in the final bill, and that's the problem. That's the problem. Look, overall, this is a complete mess. And the Republicans can blame themselves on this, Pat. You've got Lisa Murkowski, John McCain, Rob Portman, many others, 3 or 4 others actually, who all voted for a repeal-only bill in 2015. That's the one the president at the time, President Obama, vetoed. Now they had a chance to repeal this same bill and said, no, you know what, we're not going to do it. So look, at this point, no one's quite sure what's going to happen. But when it gets to conference, if it gets to conference, the problem is that if you're going to make it a more robust bill at that point, not skinny, but maybe 2%, if you will, then you've got a problem of whether or not it can pass the House. All sorts of problems.
Well, isn't it a possibility? I mean, if the Speaker appoints the conferees and the Majority Leader appoints the Republican conferees, that really they can get hold of something and put together a significant package that might be acceptable?
Possibly, and that's the hope. But the problem is that you've got so many different factions, especially in the Senate. To get 50 votes is going to be very, very difficult, Pat. You know, what we're starting to hear now up in Washington from the White House, at least, is this new version. And when I say version, it's the lingo, the language they're using. They're now calling it the beginning of the end of Obamacare. In other words, if they can just start to repeal the individual mandate and the employer mandate and the medical device tax, that will be the beginning of the end of Obamacare. And so what you can see happening, Pat, is that if some sort of small, skinny bill actually gets signed into law, that's what President Trump will say in the future. He said, look, we've begun to dismantle Obamacare, but I need more serious conservative Republicans up here and not some squishy moderates to get the final job done.
Well, they've got prices, HHS, that can limit dramatically some of these things. And can't the president himself withhold certain funds so that they are not funded as he goes along?
Absolutely. And there's been serious talk at the White House of him doing just that. And those payments, I believe, have been scheduled, or they're scheduled to come out any day now. So in other words, the president can hold back some of those Medicaid payments. But at this point, advisors are suggesting that he not do that. So once again, that's up in the air as well.
Okay. Well, he dropped a bombshell. Did anybody vet this transgender move that he made yesterday?
Well, look, I mean, this is classic Donald Trump. Tweeted out, no policy paper, no executive order, no specifics exactly to grab hold of. And that's why everybody's somewhat in limbo, especially all these lawsuits that could happen, because everybody's ready. I say everybody, talking about the ACLU and all of the LGBT groups are ready to line up at the courtroom door to go ahead and file lawsuits when they have specifics on this. In the meantime, what we understand about this is that evangelicals were heavily involved. I mean, my sources are telling me about 2.5 weeks ago, the Evangelical Advisory Board, it's not technically called that, but all of these evangelical leaders that advise the president met 2.5 weeks ago at the Oval Office, and this was discussed. And then there was a letter sent to the president this week, signed by many of these folks, about 10 or so, saying you've got to go ahead and basically not have transgenders in the military. And the president went along with it. What we also understand, there's a Make America Secure Act, and not to get too much in the weeds, but that was going to basically give $80 billion more in military spending. And what happened was the Family Research Council basically said, look, we've got enough enough Republicans to block that bill. In other words, they told the White House, we're not going to give you the $80 billion more in military funding because $4 billion of that is going to go to these transgender surgeries, and why in the world would we pay for that? So they got the president's attention on that. The president took it serious enough, and here we are.
Under Obama, they were doing transgender surgeries, weren't they?
Well, it was in flux. I mean, in other words, the order came in July of 2016 from the president, and it was under review technically. And so basically what now has to happen, you have to remember, in the House, there was this big debate over transgender surgeries, and the House, even though they were controlled by Republicans, couldn't get their act together. And basically that bill that was being debated about transgender surgeries failed. In other words, they were going to continue to allow these transgender surgeries to happen. So there's been all sorts of problems with that, but this is the fact of the matter is, Pat, because these transgender surgery, that bill got defeated, that's why the White House, part of the reason the White House took this step.
I got you. One last, what's your prognosis for the long-term relationship with the Attorney General?
Pat, it's a tough one, and the president's getting a lot of counseling saying stop it, stop it, stop it on Jeff Sessions. But look, Trump's going to do what Trump's going to do. This just in, that's real news. That's not fake news for sure. Look, I don't think it's going to end well for the Attorney General. I mean, that's the sense that I'm getting up here talking to some of my sources, that eventually it just may be too much for the Attorney General, who now, by the way, is in El Salvador, dealing with some of the MS-13 gang corruption going on over there. So he's now out of the country. So I don't think it's going to end well for him. There is talk about a recess appointment in August. I mean, I think that would be relatively foolish of the president to do if he's going to try to make a recess appointment and, in essence, not have the Senate be able to confirm a new Attorney General. I don't think that's going to happen. I think what's happening there is that within the White House, you hear Trump talk a lot about this. In other words, he likes to muse and talk about these things in an open forum discussion, and so a lot of people run with that and report it to the media, which is a whole other issue, which is leaks.
Dave, thanks for the work you're doing. Dave Brody, our very special correspondent, doing a tremendous job, and my advice to them is kiss and make up, and let's get on with it and let Jeff Sessions do his job. But turn him loose indeed on some of the leaks that are coming, which are crimes, and they've been about one a day in the first days of the Trump administration, and they're high-level leaks, and they should not be allowed. I understand Scaramucci's going after people who have leaked his financials that were supposed to be confidential, and somebody leaked it in the highest levels of the government. They've got to be put in jail. That is a crime, and it's a crime that's demonstrable.